Actually, before we get started, can you tell me how to pronounce your name?
It's Hung, the way it's spelled. Hung.
Okay. Hung Pham? Awesome. All right. Well, Hung, welcome to the show, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So it's a pleasure. So for those of you who haven't met Hung yet, Hung Pham is an entrepreneur and author in the San Francisco Bay Area. He's the founder of Culture Summit, a conference focused on building strong cultures that lead to great companies. In his books, Hung provides familiar, simple, easy to follow actionable plans for improving many areas of your life, including health, fitness, work, and personal relationships. His focus is on helping people take action and implement quickly. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your background, kind of how you got started as an author.
Right. So I've been living in the Bay Area most of my life. Shortly after college, I went into work as an engineer at one of the top tech companies. And early on in my career, I went through a pretty bad breakup. And because of that, I fell into gambling addiction. I started off gambling as a way to mask the pain with the breakup. And eventually I got into a lot of debt. And so the addiction became just trying to get out of debt. And I struggled with it for about 8 years. And it was one of the hardest times of my life because it wasn't just the gambling, but dealing with depression, dealing with suicidal thoughts because I just hated what I was doing to myself. And it wasn't until 2012 when I met my fiance that I got help. I was really serious about getting better. She got me to go to therapy, and that helped a lot with the gambling, but I was still in a lot of debt. And really, I came into entrepreneurship and publishing as a necessity. So I became just a big time hustler. I was going out and meeting a lot of people, just seeing what all these ambitious people were doing. And I met an author by the name of Patrick King, who was on one of your podcasts, and he was getting started in publishing. And he suggests that, hey, you should try, to do this too. If you really enjoy writing and you have a great story, I think you should tell it. And I've been writing since December. I have 3 books published, got another one on the way. And mostly my writing is about my personal life and what I've learned from it. And if I can help people take control of their lives and feel like they can come back and fix their mistakes, it makes me feel really fulfilled. I'm a big time believer that anyone can build the life they want. It's not about it's not about whether you have the talent or not. It's just how bad do you want to do it, because it's possible.
Absolutely, man. Totally agree. So, I mean, your story is so inspiring, and I really want to dive into it because I know there's a lot of people suffer with addiction, and maybe it's not gambling, maybe it's not drugs, maybe it's, for me, it was video games. I was like hardcore addicted to video games.
Right.
I'm lucky. I'm so grateful, that it wasn't drugs, it wasn't gambling. I didn't go into debt. I didn't, destroy my body.
It's funny, right? When I was struggling with the gambling addiction, and in the course of 8 years, I lost about $200,000, which is a lot of money.
Wow, man.
And during that time, I used to think, why can't I be addicted to drugs or alcohol? Because I always felt like if you're addicted to drugs or alcohol, at least physically, people can see the damage and they can try to get you help. But something like gambling or even video games, it's a mental addiction, and people don't really know. On the outside, you look perfectly normal, but behind closed doors, you're a wreck. But now that I'm completely better, looking back, I'm actually happy it wasn't a physical addiction, because if you lose money, you can always make more money. But if you lose your health, you can't really change that. Yeah,
definitely, man. Definitely. So what was the kind of turning point for you? I mean, how did you get out of that addiction and that cycle?
Oh, man. I'm a pretty proud person. And early on, when I was struggling with the addiction, I refused to get help because I always felt like I could beat it, right? I always felt like, and you should know as a gamer, you're very competitive. And you feel like I can do this. I don't need to get help. I always thought there was this negative connotation to like getting therapy. Like people who get therapy are really sick. And so eventually after 8 years, I just said, okay, like I can't do it. It wasn't until I met my fiance and she was like, you need to get help. You need to get better. And I just said, okay, I'm gonna give in, put my ego aside and just get help. And what really helped me was just being very transparent. So I told my friends about it. I told my family. They were really supportive. I actually wrote a post on Reddit about how I got better. And I liked it because it gave me a platform to tell my story while being anonymous, because I wasn't sure how people would judge me. And the amount of support I got from people who just commented and saying, man, that's awesome. I'm so happy for you. I'm going through the same thing. My mom is going through the same thing. What do you suggest I do? That there was what got me into writing books, because the amount of people I was helping, just telling my story, I said, hey, let me put this in a book so that I can reach more people.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So, I mean, what would you say to people out there? You know, a lot of people listening are already published authors, already really successful. Some people just thinking about it, some people just dabbling. But, you know, if anyone out there is listening and, you know, they're thinking about writing the book, but haven't really got that motivation to finish it, to get it done, to tell their story, you know, what would you say to those people?
I would say don't feel like you have to be an expert, and don't feel like you have to be perfect, right? For me, I wasn't an expert. I just had a story I wanted to tell. And if you just focus on what you want to get across in your writing, for me, it was about helping one person. If I can save one life and help one person, that's all that mattered. And I made that my goal. When I finished my book, I just focused on writing in such a way that when people read it, they could really relate to it, right? If someone's going through some personal issues and they feel like, man, this guy really told his story and I could relate to it, and that inspires me to tell my story, then that was a success for me.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I think that's such a great point that, you know, you don't have to be an expert and you can just be yourself. And in some ways, it might be even better for some readers, because, you know, like if you had a PhD in like, you know, addiction recovery and like an MD and like all these degrees and stuff, I was like, yeah, whatever, man. I'm not gonna listen to you because I don't relate to that. You know what I mean? Because like you're at such high level, but you know, you're just a regular guy, struggle with addiction. You know, you tell your story, and you know, everyone can relate to that because you know, everyone sees themselves in you.
Sometimes those stories are better because you just feel like, hey, if this guy can do it, I can do it. And it's not about having the advanced degrees or like the 20 years of experience. It's just knowing someone that's been there before and they've done it and they're sharing their story with you.
That's awesome, man. So how has, you know, publishing your books changed your life?
I think one of the best things is that I'm doing something where I know I'm helping people, and it brings a lot of fulfillment to my life. I think when I was struggling with the addiction, I felt so lost. I was working in a job I hated, but I had to work because I needed to pay off my debts. And for about 10 years, I just felt like I wasn't going anywhere with my career. And by publishing now, it's giving me a platform, not just to tell my story, but to create an online business where I don't feel like I have to work just to work, and that I have this freedom of building my own business, this freedom of helping other people. And that's been one of the best feelings I've had in a very long time.
That's awesome, man. So are you doing other things online to build your business other than the books, or is it really just a book?
Right. So I have a weekly newsletter that, you know, where I talk about personal development. That's been going well. I also produced a conference on culture and technology because I'm really passionate about that. And so just having these different businesses, it's just a very fulfilling feeling. And at the same time, knowing that you don't have to spend your life working in a job you hate.
Yeah, totally. So are you still working in your job, or did you quit?
I'm still working. The irony is that when I produced the conference on culture back in June, I was getting ready to leave my job. I was, in my mind, I said, okay, as soon as the conference is done, I'm gonna get out of here. I hate my job. And so I did the conference, and I was offered another position internally where I get to build culture at my company. And now I wake up every day really excited going to work, because every day I get to impact people's lives. And that's, to me, is a great feeling. And knowing that I can do that at work, knowing that I can do that with my writing, I feel like finally I feel a sense of purpose, and I feel motivated every day just to get up and kick ass.
That's awesome, man. So tell us about the culture conference. I mean, how did you create that, and what's it all about?
Right. So it's funny, right? My background is in computer science. I started my career as a developer, and in my first job after college, I was working in a role where I wasn't really super excited about. But you know, like most people, you're taught to go in there, put in your time, you know, grow your career in a company, climb that ladder. And about 2 years into my job, I really started to hate coming to work. I couldn't see the value in what I was doing. I couldn't see the meaning in what I was doing. And my performance really started to fall. And I remember in a one-on-one with my manager, she was basically letting me know how disappointed she was and she wasn't proud of my performance. And I finally mustered up enough courage to tell her, look, this is why I've been performing poorly, because I can't see the value in what I'm doing. I don't have that meaningful work that I'm looking for. And I was maybe 24, 25 at the time. So I assumed, being my manager, she would help me and guide me through it. But instead, she told me, she said, Hung, I'm this close from firing you right now. And if you want to keep your job, you better clean up your act. And she made me feel like it was my fault because I should be happy I had a job, but instead I was being picky about it. And so that experience always stayed with me. I didn't plan on doing a conference, but last year when I decided I wanted to build a conference, I was always passionate about culture, and that experience was very inspirational for me because not a lot of people had been talking about culture. Most of the conferences in that area were very HR focused, and I wanted a conference that spoke to people like myself, where you don't have to be in HR, you don't have to be in that field to build culture. If you care about having a happy workplace, if you care about finding meaning in what you do, come to this conference.
That's awesome, man. So when you're talking about culture, I mean, are you talking about like, different nationalities, people from different places?
No,
Or are you talking about company cultures and
we're
building?
talking about company culture. If you think about some of the great companies that are known for culture, like Airbnb, Zappos, LinkedIn, it's about creating a workplace where people are very passionate about what they do. They come into work, they know the mission, they believe in it, and for them, it's bigger than what they're doing. They're doing it because they want to help the world. They want to help the company. Like with Zappos, it's all about customer service. They believe in that. With LinkedIn, it's all about transforming the people, helping you find your dream job. And for me, I wanted to do that. I wanted to create a culture that I can help transform people.
That's awesome. So when you go into these companies, when you're teaching people about culture, how do you make a change? Like, let's say, someone's got a toxic work environment where, their managers aren't supportive. There's a lot of politicking going on, people talking behind people's backs, gossip, stuff like that. How do you transform those kinds of cultures?
What's funny is one of my mentors, and she was a speaker at my conference, I remember telling her early on, I felt so intimidated because I didn't feel like I had any authority speaking on culture. I was just a guy who was trying to solve his own problem. And she said to me, you are the exact person who should be doing it because you're the voice of the employee. You're the voice of the customer. And so for us, trying to build a culture starts with listening. It starts with just listening to what your employees are looking for, listening to what they want. I like to think about it a lot of like parenting, right? If you're a parent, you really have to just put in the time to listen to what your children want. And if you're a manager, if you're a founder, and you really care about building a better workplace, it starts with listening to your employees because they're the ones that are helping you achieve that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, how do you do that though? I mean, you're doing like focus sessions?
There's many ways. We started with focus sessions first because, with a lot of companies, especially the older ones, management's been in that role for a very long time. So they're very stuck in their ways. And when you want to convince management to really put an emphasis in rebuilding their culture, you have to give them data. That's one of the key things. They have to see that data. So for us, it started with focus groups. We did surveys, just different ways to get data, to measure it, and to be able to present it to management and say, hey, look, X% of your employees aren't happy, and they want to see, these type of changes. And we're not just telling you because we think it's what you should be doing. We're telling you because the employees are saying that.
That's awesome. So I'm curious though, if let's say you come in as an outside consultant to a company and you help them do the focus sessions and the surveys, and they're like, okay, management's like, okay, we're gonna make some changes.
Right.
How do you get that to stick? Like, how does it not just become, oh, well, we paid a consultant, they came in, everything's fixed now? Like, how do you get that changes to basically stay permanent?
Right. So any type of change really starts at the top, right? If your management, if your CEO, if your leaders don't believe in it, it doesn't stick. It has to permeate from the very top. And so we work specifically with management to make sure they understand the value in what they're doing. I feel like with a lot of companies now, employees are very adept to finding out what type of company culture do you have, right? They can go on Glassdoor, they can see what people are talking about on Twitter, on Facebook. So as a company, if you want to win the battle on talent, you have to make culture your competitive advantage. So even if you may not believe in culture, but you believe in building a successful business, you have to start investing in your culture. And so you want these changes to stick. Management has to be accountable. Management has to believe in what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So I know you've worked with a ton of people on this. What are kind of some common, so let's say culture mistakes that a lot of companies are making?
I feel like the older companies, like tech companies who've been around for 10, 15, 20 years, some of the mistakes they're making is that they feel like because they've been around, they don't have to put an emphasis on culture, right? Some companies have leadership who are sort of command and conquer, where it's you do it my way or the highway. We see that a lot in older companies. Newer ones, we tend to see companies that focus too much on the business and they forget that your business doesn't grow without people. And so we try to make sure that the younger companies, the startups, take time to invest in the well-being of their people, make sure that their people are supported. Otherwise, if you just focus on the business and you lose track of your people, your company is slowly going to start to fall apart. Either if someone's unhappy, they're going to leave regardless. So it's important to make sure that people they know that they're being heard. They know that they're being valued.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, man. So what are like some common characteristics then of companies with great cultures? Because, if we start with your methodology, we listen to our employees,
Right.
see what's important to them. I mean, that could go anywhere, you know what I mean? Some people could be like, hey, we want daycare. Some of the companies could be like, hey, we just want, more pay. Like but what works? I mean, and how do you know when someone asks for something that's not really the right for the company?
Mm-hmm. You'll know when you see people doing things because they really believe in it, right? So there are companies out there. So I'll give you a story. One of the speakers we had at my conference was from LinkedIn. And back in like 2009, LinkedIn was a fairly young company. They couldn't compete with Google's, Facebook's of the world in terms of recruiting, right? They didn't have a strong brand like Google or Facebook. They couldn't pay that much. And so for them, it was about the mission, getting people to buy into the mission. And for LinkedIn, it was about transforming lives and helping other people find their dream job. So when you want people to really believe in your culture, you have to get them to buy into the mission. So it's not always about money. It's not always about the perks like free lunch, free beer, free alcohol. But at the end of the day, what gets them to come into the office every day and to give their hardest? And that comes with buying into the mission of what they're doing. And LinkedIn had this great strategy for using culture as their competitive advantage. And in a span of, I think, 4 years, they were able to grow their workforce from 300 to over 5,000. And they were beating out companies like Facebook and Google for applicants. And I think it's a great example of how culture can be your number one competitive advantage.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So how do you, from an implementation standpoint, how do you keep the culture growing and improving? Do you guys do like weekly meetings? I mean, what is the actual like methodology that you use to make sure that progress just keeps being made?
Right. So it goes back to listening. It goes back to making sure management is accountable, making sure management is accessible. So every month we have listening sessions. We work with the teams where we're getting their feedback. We're getting their input. We're seeing what works, what doesn't work. And we're taking that data back to management and we're using it to build or improve some of the programs that we have going on. So it's not a one-time thing. It's just that two-way communication you always have to have. And eventually the employees will see that you're taking initiative. They have a hand in building the type of culture they want to work in. And so when you have that type of buy-in, then it's always going to be an ongoing process and they're always going to be involved in what they're doing.
That's awesome. Yeah, totally, man. So I want to switch gears here a little bit and talk more about, your publishing business because you are self-published.
Right.
Like how did you get started with that and what are some of the lessons you learned along the way?
So it's funny. I've always been interested in online businesses, but I never could really understand how to do it. I couldn't really put it together. And this is while I was struggling with the gambling addiction. And in 2012, when I finally got help, and I really wasn't looking at online businesses, but I was just looking to really put myself out there, go to different events, go meet people who are ambitious, who are doing things, just to be in that space, to be in that type of energy. And again, right, it wasn't about, you know, meeting the next Steve Jobs, because I can never be Steve Jobs, but meeting someone who's maybe 1 or 2 steps ahead of me, who was doing it, that can help me. And that's how I came across Patrick King. At that time, he just barely got started. He you know, had quit his job, decided to write full time, and he helped me just get 1 book published. And for me, I said, okay, well, let me just get it done, right? It wasn't about getting it perfected. It wasn't about making sure I had a perfectly written book. Just get it done. And once I did that, and I saw how well my book did, I saw the positive reviews. That was the best part. When I read reviews and I feel like I'm changing people's lives, it gives me more ambition to start writing more. And my first book wasn't that detailed. I talked about taking action and how do you take action to make change in your life. But as I got more into writing, and my latest book, I really go into detail about all of my failures in life, the gambling addiction, the suicidal period of my life, the depression. And as I felt more comfortable with writing, I got really into telling my story. And I'm hoping that through my books, people will feel that they can change their lives around.
Awesome, man. It's totally inspiring. So have you found any really cool marketing strategies that have worked well for you? I mean, what have you been doing just to promote the books?
For me, it's so I'm building my lists, and for me, I use a pretty it's a pretty basic strategy where I'll email my list, let them know that I'm working on a new book. So initially, I'll email them, want to get their feedback on what they're struggling with. It's a very simple survey, 2 questions. What are you struggling with right now, and how can I help you? And then from there, I get ideas on what they want to hear. So I use that to write my books. I use that to write my weekly newsletters. And then I'll let them know that, hey, I've got this new book coming out. It's addressing this certain topic. And I'll send them a beta copy that has about maybe 30% of my book. So that way they can read it, know what it's about. And then I'll send out a newsletter 2-3 weeks later, letting them know that it's published on Amazon. You can get it, you know, for the low price of 99 cents before it goes up. And then I'll work with a couple of different services to promote the book. But it comes down to just having really good copy, a really good title, subtitle, sales copy that people can read and understand, and say, hey, this book is for me. I get it. It's you know, about this topic. I relate to it. I want to buy it. And in the short term, when you want to sell a book, you really have to pay attention to your headlines, your subtitles, your cover. That's what's going to help you get that initial sale. But if you really want to do this in the long run, you want to have success as an author, the content has to be really good as well. Someone can buy your book once, and if it has crappy content, they're not going to buy it again. But if you have really good content, they're going to come back. They're going to want to buy more of your books because they like what you're writing about. They can relate to it.
Absolutely, totally, man. So I love your kind of your email list strategy there, where you're emailing people a survey about what the problems they're having, how you can help them. You email them the beta copy, like 30% of your book. So you're really keeping your your followers, your readers involved as they're working on your new projects and getting their feedback and making sure you incorporate that into your next project.
Right. When I think about my readers, I pretty much think about people like myself when I was struggling with finding my direction in life. And so it's very personal for me. It's a very personal relationship. I offer them, if they want, they can meet with me like we're doing right now on Hangout or Skype for 15-20 minutes. We can chat through some of their problems, and I can see that if I can help them. So it's not just an email list, but I really care about my readers. I try to make time to help each and every one of them. But at the same time, I want to see how I can help them in a larger scale, and that's where the survey comes in. That's where the weekly newsletters, the books come in.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I love that. So you're actually doing one-on-ones with your readers. I think that's so important, because I think it's really easy to, to get in that mindset where you're locked in your room, you're all by yourself, and you're just like checking out the world while you write. But it's so important to really, like you said, get that one-on-one conversation with people, who are your readers, who are in your audience, so you can get to know them, what they want, what they need, how you can help them, how you can support them, because it's going to make you such a better author. It also can help you solve your own problems as well.
Yes, exactly. I want to make sure they know that I care, right? I want to make sure they know that I'm just not a name on an email. And when we talk, to each other, I care about them. And so for me, if you really care about your customer base, everything else will take care of itself, right? So if you care about your customers, you focus on what their needs are. Sales are going to take care of itself. The business, it will take care of itself. You just have to focus on the customer.
Absolutely, man. Love it. Totally agree. Yeah, and that's such a perfect fit with what you said about culture. You start with listening, and it's the same way with your email list with your readers. You gotta listen to what they want, and then give them what they want. Exactly. Yeah, that's awesome, man. So, any last words of wisdom that you want to share with people listening right now?
If I can do it, if I can struggle with a gambling addiction, if I can struggle with depression and turn my life around, anyone can do it, right? And it doesn't have to be self-publishing. If you just have something that you really want to build and get into, it's possible. And if you want to learn more about my journey, how I've been able to become an entrepreneur, definitely sign up for my newsletter. The address is missionandpossible.com, like the movie Mission Impossible, but it's Mission and Possible.
Awesome, man. Love it. So anywhere else, your blog or website people should go to learn more about you and your books?
So from there, you sign up to my newsletter. You can learn more about my books. You can always search me on Amazon. Just look for my author name, Pham. I've got a couple books out there, but I'm publishing more, so you'll hear from me fairly shortly.
Awesome, great. And so if you're listening right now, we'll have all the links to Hung's websites, books on Amazon, everything, and the show notes at publishingprofitspodcast.com. Hung, thanks so much for being with us here, man. It's an absolute pleasure to have your inspiration. Your story is so inspiring. I know it's going to help millions of people all over the world. So thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me. Really excited to have this talk with you.
Yeah, man. Have a great day.
You too. See ya.